So where we are in phase 3 in attrition is approaching the winter. The ground gets much harder to fight. There'll be skirmishes. We get to next spring, they'll go at it again, hammer and tongs. If there is no breakthrough, if they're not hurt, if one side is not hurting enough, at that point you may see the outline of the peace deal emerging. I'm not saying it'll be signed, but the outline of it will emerge.
Fighting in Ukraine goes on in Kherson in the south and Kharkiv in the north of the country there. The rush towards Kherson is a shift from the original target of the Donbass. Tim Marshall is a foreign affairs analyst and author. Good morning to you, Tim.
Good morning to you. By the way, very briefly, we had a saying when I was a correspondent, sometimes the question is more important than the answer.
But is that not a manifesto for showing off, Tim Marshall? I don't want to accuse Westminster journalists of doing that, but that's what they do. They're not going to get an answer, are they? Doorstepping generally, I think isn't showing off.
It's mostly risible, comical, makes them look bad. But sorry, you didn't ask me on here to talk about that.
No, I do think it is interesting. I think the broadcast doorstep is 90% of the time a waste of time, but maybe you just do it for the 10% where it actually comes off.
Indeed.
Now, Russia. Where are we in your view in terms of the war? Because it becomes a pressing issue for many reasons: humanitarian, moral, ethical, geopolitical, but also it is a pressing question for every single person in the West. Yes. The course of this war, because it ultimately affects their lives, as we can see now in very real terms. Does this look like...
is in part of Mrs. Truss's inbox, and she's spoken to Zelensky already and indeed to Biden about this. I think we're in phase 3. Phase 1, the invasion, which was halted, giving time for the weapons flow to arrive. Phase 2, the Russians concentrating on the east in the Donbass and the south. And now phase 3, it's simply attrition. There's a 620-mile-long front line. And in the past week or so, the Ukrainians have actually gone on the counter-attack, but it is incremental. It's village by village and sometimes just a few hundred yards. And I don't think they're going to break through across that front. So where we are in phase 3 in attrition is approaching the winter. The ground gets much harder to fight. There'll be skirmishes. We get to next spring, they'll go at it again, hammer and tongs. If there is no breakthrough, if they're not hurt, if one side is not hurting enough, at that point you may see the outline of the peace deal emerging. I'm not saying it'll be signed, but the outline of it will emerge. The other battle, though, is the battle for public opinion throughout the European countries due to gas prices. Don't know if you noticed it, Stig, but last weekend there was a march of about 80,000 people in Prague calling for the Czech Republic to stop support for Ukraine and force a deal because of gas prices. I think we'll see more of that this winter.
And that's an interesting question, isn't it? Because if there is attrition throughout winter and then you get to spring and no peace deal immediately signs, people will start saying, we may have been able to cobble together various packages that enable us to survive the winter. We're not willing to survive another winter. Or actually, is there a moment in which we can move away from Russian supplies sufficient in the West for it to be less of a problem? Because that's the other question, isn't it? That can we get out of it?
Sorry, Stig, these timings are in the minds of all the leaders. For example, in Putin's mind is, if I can't get the breakthrough next year, can I hang on for 2024? Because who might pop up in the White House? Trump. And if he does, I think we would see the support for Ukraine severely diminish and pressure grow on Zelensky. The Europeans and ourselves are looking at, well, if we can get to next year, if we can get through this winter and the support for Ukraine can continue, have we put into place enough? I mean, Germany, for example, I think it's building 3 LNG, liquid natural gas terminals, floating terminals off its coast to get LNG in, because you can buy that from elsewhere. So all these timings are pushing in. Also, Europe's done a reasonable job of filling its supplies. I think most of the European countries are above 80% capacity. So it's going to be difficult this winter, but whether there will be actual blackouts, I don't know. I think our government, which has sort of been living in exile in the Tory heartlands for the past few months, will now wake up and start messaging, because the Germans have been acting for weeks now. And since September the 1st, all German public buildings can only be heated to 19 degrees. The corridors, there's no heating, there's no hot water. The French municipal swimming pools are closing because they're trying to conserve energy. So I think the messaging of the British government will start now that we have the zombie government has come back to life?
Well, that's an interesting question, Tim. I think that's exactly a good place to leave it. That will they want to be seen as sort of taking those steps, sort of the hair shirt steps that they are doing in Europe? Interesting whether Liz Truss embraces that or not. But it's a very, very good point to say that it's happening already in Western Europe. Tim Marshall, good to speak to you as ever. He's a foreign affairs analyst and author.